Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 302. Treat energy the same way you treat money. It is a finite resource that needs to be wisely managed and invested. Dan Apani.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Black Box. Black Box is a new platform and community that is all about financial freedom for filmmakers like you. If you join Black Box, you will be transformed from being a worker to being a maker of your own content. And you'll be making steady passive income from the global market. Black Box currently allows you to upload your stock footage once, get it to many global agencies, and then allows you to share that passive income stream with your collaborators. Whether you want to submit old footage that's been sitting around in your hard drives or create brand new content, Black Box is for you. It's really quite revolutionary. With Black Box, filmmakers can concentrate on making great content while Black Box takes care of all the business BS. Just visit www.blackbox.global to find out more. And today's show is also sponsored by Indie Film Hustle TV, the world's first streaming service dedicated to filmmakers, screenwriters, and content creators. If you want access to filmmaking documentaries, feature films about filmmaking, interviews with some of the top screenwriters and filmmakers in Hollywood, as well as educational online courses all in one place, IFH TV is for you. Just head over to indiefilmhustle.tv. So guys, today on the show, I have a huge treat. Today's guest is Darious Britt, or as anyone who's been on YouTube for the last 5 years would know him as D4Darious. Now, Darious has been able to build up a hell of a following on YouTube. He's got over 340, I think now, or something like that, 350,000 followers. He's been doing this for about 5 years. He runs a business now all about helping filmmakers and showing them tips and taking them on his journey. And he's got a rabid fan base around what he does. And I was a big fan of his for a long time because he was spewing out some amazing content and great knowledge bombs on his YouTube channel. And the way he does it is extremely entertaining, really in your face. And I just generally love his style and presentation of his content. Now, Darious and I had the pleasure of meeting at the Mammoth Film Festival this year, where we were snowed in and literally had nowhere to go. It was like The Shining where we were at. All the roads were locked off. No planes were leaving. We were basically stuck in a ski lodge, very similar to Jack Nicholson. So we had nothing but time to sit down and talk, and I'm not exaggerating. We probably sat down and talked for 10 or 15 hours over the course of the few days that we were there. We were hanging out all the time, talking, and we really just flowed really, really well when we were talking to each other. And as I was talking to him, I'm like, man, this would be a great episode for the podcast. He's like, well, we got to do it. So we did. And I blocked out a 2-hour chunk because I knew this episode would go crazy, and it did. Darius and I could literally sit down and talk for 4 or 5 hours straight. But I felt that 2 hours was enough for this first session. But we really, really went deep, deep, deep into the psychology of filmmakers, of independent filmmakers, philosophies, the brutal, brutal truth and raw truth of what it is to be an independent filmmaker in today's world, and what you have to do differently now that they did not teach you in film school. So it was a really amazing, amazing episode. I cannot wait for you guys to hear it. So without any further ado, please enjoy my epic conversation with Darious Britt. I'd like to welcome to the show the legendary Darious Britt, man. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right, man. Every day's a hustle.
Every day. Every day we hustling, baby. Every day we're hustling. So, man, we had the pleasure of finally meeting at the Mammoth Film Festival this year, and where we were snowed in like The Shining.
Yeah,
and
whiteouts.
Like a complete whiteout. We were locked in, like landlocked in a way that we couldn't, roads were, like you hear about these things in the movies, like the roads were shut down and the airport is nothing's leaving or coming in. but I'd never been in that situation. I don't think you have either.
I haven't, man. I felt like a tourist in that, like it was nice to visit and see that, but to live there, I couldn't do it.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's insane. God bless the people who live up there. It's crazy. But we got a chance to meet, and all that snowed in time, actually, just you and I sat by the roaring fire in our hotel, and we would just sit and pontificate.
Yeah, it was like 2 days straight.
Yeah, 2 days straight of us just sitting down, like doing like these deep sessions of discussing about the state of indie film and filmmakers and what we went through and all of this kind of craziness. And I was like, man, we should be recording this. Like, why isn't this being recorded? So this is what this podcast and this interview is about. So kind of talk a little bit about what we talked about then and share it with both our tribes in many ways. So for people who don't know who you are you? What do you do? And how can who are you?
Yeah, so my name is Darious Britt. I'm a filmmaker and a YouTuber, act, direct, produce, write, all that as well. And I run the D4Darious YouTube channel right now, where I think last time I checked, sitting at around 320,000 subscribers. Mm-hmm. And what I do on the channel is I basically empower filmmakers. So I've released features, short films, behind-the-scenes videos, tips, tricks, vlogs about filmmaking. It's almost like a variety channel in a sorts, geared towards addressing the problems and the concerns and things that filmmakers have in the journey, and also sharing my journey as a filmmaker, because I'm still learning stuff too.
Yes.
So yeah, man, all of the above. Now,
it's funny, man, that because when I was doing interviews at Mammoth and you were on the list, I'm like, oh, I got to talk to Darious, because I've known about you and I followed your stuff for a long time, just because, you stand out. Your technique and the way your flavor of how you give out the information definitely sticks out. And I've always been a fan of yours.
I knew about you too, because I was watching Indie Film Hustle. I was listening to Indie Film Hustle like way back when, before you did This Is Meg.
You were old school, man.
Yeah, listening to your stuff, man. So when I saw your name pop up, when I got an email saying, would you like to be, or are you available for an interview? And I was like, interview, and it's Indie Film Hustle. Oh, wait, my ears perked up. Like, what? No, this, like, really? Is he even out here? Like, what? It was like, obviously, it wasn't even a question, man. I was like, hell yeah, man, let's get in this. Let's talk about this.
And then that one, like, 15 or 20-minute interview or whatever we did then, ended up being literally, I'm not kidding, probably about 10 or 15 hours of talking.
Yeah, the initial interview we did, I think, was
like 47 minutes. Something like that. Yeah.
We're of the same kind of ilk in terms of our philosophies on how things should happen. And I think, as you can, I'm surely attest to this, I feel like there's two different types of people. There are people who they just kind of do and they figure it out as they go. And then there are the people who have to have all of the pieces before they start. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can flip. Maybe you're the person who has to have all the pieces before you start. And then eventually later on in life, you flip and you're like, you know what, I just got to do this. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's the other way. But I think, I've had journeys in my filmmaking experience or life where I just had to just do things and figure it out as I go. And, I think I connected with you with your podcast because you kind of called yourself on that. And it's like, hey, it took me 41 years to shoot my first feature. And a lot of it was fear. And, and I just had to, at a certain point, it's like, I'm either going to do it or shut up.
Right. Pretty much.
Yeah. So, man.
It was interesting when we saw each other. We're like, oh man, it's kind of like we'd known each other for years. It was a real weird experience. It was
work in the same space too, because we both work in the online space, and I think that automatically you inherit a sort of kinship with that because it's a very different space than working in the classical Hollywood space, or even in some respects like the indie film space. I think the online space, even though we have a lot to do with that, there are certain things that are different as well,
Like what? So what are a few of those things?
Like working with SEO, understanding how to cultivate an audience, and that sometimes it's not about the project you're on, but it's about the micro content and the value that you're giving people in between projects or in between jobs, as they say. Whereas the classical Hollywood or even the indie film, right, is all about the project. A one-off. Yeah, I spent 2 years making this thing, 2-3 years. And then when it's done, here I am, here's my work. You live and die by it. It takes off or it doesn't. But then you just disappear again. There's not much of a footprint in terms of social media, in terms of micro content. Whereas when you're working on the online space, it's the opposite. Like, your projects are important, but what's more important is your ability to brand and your ability to leverage micro content to build community around what you're doing. So that way it offers you more relational value to your audience, but also in terms of the work that you're doing, it just offers you more opportunities.
Now, so let's talk a little bit about your rise in what you've done. You've been on YouTube now since what,
2013?
Yeah, 2013, right? So you were there kind of before a lot of these guys were, talking and doing their things. Like, everybody now has a filmmaking channel. Like, everybody. I'm going to teach you how to, work with a DSLR camera.
Yeah.
I'm going to
B-roll. Here's some B-roll tips.
How you to do B-roll tips and top 5 lenses, the best bang for your buck, and all that kind of stuff. And you've been able to cultivate a fairly ravenous audience. You don't got 4 or 5 million in, but the audience, which is still substantial, you still have over 300,000 subscribers onto your YouTube channel, but they're pretty ravenous. I noticed that they're very engaged. Can you give some tips and kind of understanding to people listening how you build an audience and what it takes to maintain that? Because you've been doing it now, 5 years? So you've been doing it longer than I have, and you've been able to cultivate that and maintain it and grow it while you've been doing it. So what do you have to say?
It feels weird because I've known you for a minute. So when did you start?
2015.
2015. Oh man. So, wow. Okay.
You were already 2 years in.
You started before I did. It felt that way anyway.
No, I did in life, but, I was shooting. I was shooting while you were watching Saturday morning cartoons, sir. But
no, I just meant Indie Film Hustle.
Yeah.
So man, that's a simple question, but it's a kind of a complicated answer, to be honest with you. Like, I'm still figuring out a lot of things, and I'm still learning things about what I do even now. I think my idea of what it took to grow an audience when I first started is very different than what I think is required to grow an audience now. And I think, to boil it down to something stupid simple, it's basically value. The more value you offer, the more potential you have to grow an audience. But there's different types of value. There is the educational value, right? And then there's the entertainment value. There's the relational value. There's the what you represent value. There's inspiration. And I think when you talk about creators online, whether it be podcasting or whether it be YouTube, there are certain thresholds of talent. And depending on where you are on that value scale will kind of ultimately dictate where you fall in those thresholds. And just for, all intents and purposes, we'll just say there are 3 thresholds right now, right? Mm-hmm. Threshold 1, we'll take my niche, for example, or even yours to a certain extent. Threshold 1 is information, right? If you've got the information, awesome. You pass the first threshold. That may award you 3,000 subscribers on YouTube or 3 or 4. The podcasting world is a little different, but that's the first threshold. But in order to get to the next threshold, you got to have more than just information, because people in this day and age can get that information anywhere, really. Right. So many people doing the same thing. So the next threshold becomes execution. Okay, you can give me information, but how are your videos edited? How are they lit? What do they look like? How do you sound? Does the sound horrible? Do you sound like, you're in the bottom of a submarine? Did you shoot it on a potato? So that's like another threshold of value, right? So now you're like, okay, I got the information, but I also got the execution. Mm-hmm. Like, these look right. They sound professional. Okay, boom, you cross another threshold of value. So maybe that gets you to the 10,000 mark or something. And then there's yet another threshold of personality and relatability. Are you somebody that people could see themselves getting a beer with? Or do you approach it with the classical hostmanship of, I'm going to keep my hands in this little box right here and I'm going to talk like this and it feels just like artificial and stale, like if you pierce that second threshold of value of being relatable and authentic as a person and not being afraid to be a person and basically just have personality, that's like a third threshold of value that you cross. So then that may award you like 20, and it just keeps going up and up and up from there. Relational value, your ability to market yourself, your ability to think past your nose when making videos. Some people, they have a lot to offer, but they don't study YouTube, right? Mm-hmm. So how are you going to be good at YouTube if you don't study YouTube? And that's another threshold of value, though. So you can have a lot of other things going for you, but if you don't understand the platform, you don't understand the kind of tropes and things that the community indulges, that's one less thing that you have to arm yourself with. And I find the people that are very successful on this platform, they just have lots of value to offer in different tiers. It's not just my information's the best. No, it's like the information, the personality. It's like the whole package is right there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think information is just not enough anymore. No. I mean, when I showed up, I had arguably some different kind of information because I was kind of talking at it from a very a lot of the experience I dealt with, and there is not a lot of that information out there of someone who's been doing it for 20 odd years and like real raw stuff. I'm assuming that's one of the reasons why you were, drawn to my podcast. So like I was telling you how it is. I'm like, look, this is just the way it is.
Yeah. Within 20 minutes, it's like, oh, it's got the goods.
so I had, I appreciate it, but I had that, but it was not just about information because at a certain point that information will change. It's like, it's just not enough. It's not enough. Anyway. And then even in the short time I've been doing Indie Film Hustle, a lot of that information gets put out in other places. I still believe I still have very unique perspectives and I have very unique information, but I do combine it with presentation, how I put it out there, authenticity and character. And
two, it's not only the fact that information is not enough. It's worse than that. Mm-hmm. It's what good is the information if the people are gone before you get to the point?
Right.
Like I'm a firm believer that as brands or online personalities or whatever, our first responsibility is to entertain, period. Mm-hmm. Because if you can't keep their attention, they're not going to get to the value.
Correct.
That's my own opinion, though. You ask 10 people, everybody's got their own. But I firmly believe your first priority is to entertain them first.
Mm-hmm. There's no question. No question about it. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I liked your channel and what you do is because you are entertaining. There's no question about it. The way you presented the videos, the way you shot them, the editing style, there was an energy, a kinetic energy to them that was really nice and also very unique in the space. I had not seen that approach. A lot of the other kind of approaches are very, well, this is a DSLR camera and I have a DSLR camera now and you can put on a Sigma, and the Sigma is the best bang for your buck. And you're like, and then you come out like, what up, everybody? This is it. It's Darious. I'm Britt. And you just and you're cutting, and it's like a fisheye lens, and it was just all this kind of information. But it's a good lesson for people listening to understand that it is about presentation. It is about execution. And I have to use that word execution, even I put it like a real big exclamation point on there because it's really always about execution. In movies, in a script, like you can give a script to 15 directors. It's about execution. How are you going to pull off?
Ideas are a dime a dozen. Execution is everything.
Now what?
Go ahead.
No. So what advice do you have for people who are stuck in this vicious circle or vicious hamster wheel of ideas? Like I have all the ideas in the world, but I'm just a little too afraid to move forward on it, or I'm going to make up excuses not to move forward with it. Like I need a red 8K to shoot my dramedy that is shot basically in one room. And I need this and I need that and I need this actor. I need that much money just for me to get up out of the bed in the morning. Those are all excuses. I did those excuses. That's just absolutely pure fear and excuses. pure fear is what that is. And you can call it whatever you want. Like that, I'll call shenanigans. I'll call BS.
Fear extract. It's like I got to default to something you said a number of times in your podcasts. Yeah. Stop throwing obstacles in front of yourself.
Correct.
And that's exactly what it is. When you start to say, I can't make this idea unless X, that's an obstacle. Because at the end of the day, you either want to do something or you don't. And that can take different shapes, right? Like most of the time when we get into filmmaking, we want to make the films of our youth, right? Like Jurassic Park, Star Wars, whatever. Most of the time, because that's why we even thought
that inspired us. That inspired us.
Yeah, that's the thing that gripped us, right? But the problem with that is, there's a whole economics aspect of film that piggybacks on this. It's like, great. Do you have a $200, $300, $400, $500 million? It's like, obviously you don't. But it kind of goes back to the question of, once you get past that, just making films of your youth and realize, wait, there's many different aspects to this. There's indie film, there's short films, there's online making films for the online space. There's, once you realize there's a whole bunch of different flavors, then you go back to that question of what is it you really want to do? If all you want to do is make your passion project, that script that you've had in your drawer that you've been working on for like 5 to 7 years, right, and you're continuing to look for money from friends and family and everyone, if that's all that you want to do, then you're a fundraiser.
Right.
You're not a filmmaker, because if you're a filmmaker, your urge to make films would override any one project.
Yes.
Any project. It's like, okay, I would love to do this thing, but I can't do this right now. So let me put that aside, and I want to make something I can do. Then you make something else. Oh, this is great, but I can't do this one either. You know what? I'd be happy just shooting a short. Like, I just need to do it. I have to learn. I'm happy when I'm shooting. I don't care what it is. I think that's the state you need to be. That's the only way to not throw obstacles in front of yourself, is to just if you want to make films, make films. But now, and I'm kind of avoiding this a little bit, but this kind of goes to the larger question of what is your real passion? And I find that, maybe you can speak to this too, but I find that most of the time when I run into people, not to dilute my first point, okay, most of the time when I run into people and I hear a lot of obstacles they're throwing in front of themselves, usually they don't want it bad enough.
Oh, absolutely.
Usually they don't love it enough. It's conditional love. I'll say it that it's conditional love. It's kind of like having that girlfriend, right? Where you're like, man, yeah, she's so cute. She's this 36, 24, 30, whatever the measurements, what I mean? It's like, yeah, I like you. Let her gain a couple of extra LBSs, catch her in the morning time without makeup, all these little things. And before you know it, that thing that you thought was love is just infatuation.
Right.
It's just conditional at that point, right? Oh, I thought I really wanted this, but I only want it this way. If I can't have it this way, then I don't want to have it at all.
Right.
And I find that's what a lot of filmmakers have is it's conditional love. It's like, yes, I like film as long as I'm only shooting my idea this way with this amount of money. If I can't have it this way, I don't want to have it at all.
It's almost like a comfort zone being spoiled mentality. And I need to have it my way and only my way. And if it doesn't fit within my little parameters that I've set, then I'm just going to make excuses or be a bitter, angry filmmaker. And I think I told you, and I say it a lot, I'm like, we all know angry, bitter filmmakers. And if you don't know any angry, bitter filmmakers, you are the angry, bitter filmmaker that everybody knows. Because it's true. I was an angry, bitter filmmaker. Are you kidding me? But it's kind of like hey, I want to look jacked up like The Rock. But everyone, look, who doesn't want to have an insane physical physique, just ripped up, 6-pack, buff, tanned, all that kind of stuff.
8'12",
8'12", whatever, whatever you are, who doesn't want that? But nobody's willing to put in that work that The Rock does. The Rock works all the time. I love when he always says, oh, I don't have to get in shape for projects. I just stay in shape. It's just easier to do that. And I'm like, man, that is, because some guys get buff for the movie and then they drop, and then they get buff and they drop. He's like, nah, man, I just stay all the time. That's who he is. And he's like, well, he's almost pushing 50 at this point, I think. He
doesn't even look like it.
No, he looks amazing. And he's The Rock. Come on. He's the best. But but that is that conditional thing that you're talking about. Like, I want that, but I'm not.
But it has to be in the way that I want it.
And I don't want to put in the work. I don't want to put in the work. I want it to be handed to me. And so many filmmakers, myself included, and I'm sure you did at one point in your career or not, you were expecting, I deserve this, or I'm entitled to this, and all this kind of stuff that goes in the mindset of filmmakers. Like, that's why, when I do podcasts or, I talk about this kind of stuff, people are like, man, you're like inside my head. I'm like, yeah, dude, because I'm inside my own head. These are all thoughts I've gone through. And if I haven't personally gone through them, I've literally talked to filmmakers sitting in my edit suite over the course of my career, who I talk to them about it, and I see what they're doing and how they do things. It's the mindset of filmmakers and artists in general. It could be screenwriters, it could be creatives of any sort, is fascinating. Because a lot of times in this business, they just don't want to put in that work. They don't want to kind of get out of that comfort zone. And I did that I was 41 when I shot my first feature because
it was still
of that.
You, though. I think there's a trial by fire period that has to happen for you to figure out if it's for you.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Usually that involves getting slapped around a little bit. Like I spent 7 years on my first feature, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of great moments, but a lot of low moments. And it was just a roller coaster ride. Even on YouTube, it's been a roller coaster ride to some extent in different areas. But you get slapped up a little bit and your expectations get rattled of what you think you should deserve or what you think is in the cards for you or how fast you think whatever should come. And then it always gets tossed around. And that's kind of the gauntlet that you have to go through to find out what it is about what you're doing you really love. And if you love it enough, because without that period, there's nothing to test your mettle to see if it's really for you or not. And if you get slapped around a little bit and you go back to square one, and your response is, okay, well, the way I thought things were going to happen is not happening. But what are my options? If you tell yourself, I can't do anything else, like this is all I'm good at, this is all I want to do, I'm just going to have to figure out how to make it work, then it's for you, because you're not going to stop at that point. But if you end up in that situation and you say to yourself, this is not how I thought it would work out. Oh, wow. The business side is very ugly. Whoa. Do I really want to be a part of this and this and this and this? And all you see is negatives. Mm-hmm. And you say to yourself, there's a couple of other things that, I wouldn't mind doing this over here or this over here. Mm-hmm. Then it's not for you. And that's okay. That's okay. Mm-hmm. But we have to be real with ourselves, mm-hmm. You have to be willing to take the bad with the good. And when all chips are down, yes, I will go out and I'll shoot a microfilm with no expectations of getting into Sundance, mm-hmm. no expectations of launching a career, no expectations of anything, right. Much less making money off of it. But I will do it because I just want to get better. So I'm not going to spend any money on it. But I want to get better.
Isn't that an amazing concept? That is the way it should be. That's the way it should be. And so many filmmakers aren't that. They just don't. They never get to that point because they're afraid. Look, I didn't want to make a first movie because I was like, I needed to be perfect. And because of that stupid perfectionism, it's ego. So because of that, it took me so long to finally get it done. And look what happened when I made the decision to make Meg. 30 days after I had the idea to make a movie, I was shooting a movie. I was just like, that's the way I'm going to roll and we're going to shoot. And we shot it in 8 days and we just ran for it. And I did everything. I made mistakes. I learned. I was the DP on it. I was everything, all the other hypheness that I did on it. But I moved.
You learned more in those 30 days than I'm sure you've learned because taking on an endeavor like that is like a film school into itself. You learn just as much about yourself.
Yep.
As you are about film.
But I'll tell you what though, for me, I just needed to prove to myself that I could do it, because the theory was there. Like I'd worked on 70 features in post-production. I've directed commercials and music videos and short films, and I had done all of that stuff. So I in theory knew I could do it. In theory. Like I've done this. I've finished films for other filmmakers. I know I could finish it in post. No doubt about that. I know I could shoot it because I've done that before. I know I knew all of it in theory, but I had to prove to myself that I could slay the Kraken. I can slay that Kraken that I had created for myself. And once I did that, then all bets were off. And then my next film I shot in 4 days at Sundance, because I was like, well, screw it.
You can do it.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I could do this. It's great. But I wouldn't have been able to do the second film without I would have never tried to make Ego and Desire before I made Meg, because I needed to test my mettle in Meg, and I was able to do it, and it ended up doing really well. But proving to yourself that you can do it is also another big thing that a lot of people don't talk about.
I think it's overlooked because we have this Cinderella mentality when it comes to, like, we want our first foray out of the gate to be the boom, stars in the, like the fireworks crack. The fireworks explode. The Cinderella, like, we want people to just be like, you're a genius.
Yeah.
You just
Reservoir Dogs, Mariachi, Clerks, Slacker.
But none of those guys were overnights, really. If you look at their stories, none of those guys were overnight.
No, all of them have hard work. All of them had hard work, but their first feature was overnight. But I was actually just saying this earlier today. Those guys did not start making their movie expecting that, Clerks, when Kevin Smith made Clerks, he did not even expect it to get anywhere. He wasn't expecting that thing to blow him up.
Nor would it in this day and age.
It wouldn't. But at that moment in time, it worked. And same thing for Mariachi. I mean, Robert Rodriguez just wanted Mariachi to go to the Mexican VHS market. Like, he didn't even think of, like, what? Sony, Columbia Pictures, what? And Reservoir Dogs was just like a small little gangster movie that Tarantino wrote. Like, he wasn't expecting it to completely shoot him up out of the world.
Correct me if I'm wrong. He went to the Sundance Institute and they hated the project.
But he did get in. No, he did do. I've actually seen the footage of it. He did get into the lab.
He got in, but
they didn't like it. They worked.
Yeah, they said it's too much dialogue and all this, and I think that's what the guy's known for crying out.
It's like it's yappy, all this yappy all the time. You're not.
But again, getting slapped up though, you got to take your licks and get slapped. Anything worth doing doesn't come easy.
Amen.
It doesn't. Anything worth doing doesn't come easy, and I think that. There's been several times in my journey, not only with the feature, but even on YouTube, where things aren't looking good, bro. They're not looking good, man.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, why
am I here?
At this rate, how many years am I looking at to get where I'm trying to go? Oh, man, at least 15, 20.
Right.
And that's not even talking about the monetary side. You're like, is this worth it? Or should I just stop and go get a job at Mickey D's right now?
Yeah.
And it's like, and these are hard discussions, though. These are hard conversations, man. When you're looking stats in the face and you're having to say, do I have what it takes? And the answer is, I don't know.
Right.
I've already given this thing my best shot. This is my best shot. I just gave it. I don't have anything else to offer right now.
Right.
The marketplace is looking back at me and saying,
nope.
Yeah, bro. Like,
and
this ain't what the streets want to see right now, and you're like,
the streets want to see.
Yeah, man. You have to ask. These are hard conversations, and I've had them at least 3 times, man, where I'm like, man.
Is this worth it?
It's like if I keep doing it, there is no guarantee of success. There is no yellow brick road. There is no model to try that I know is going to work. Right. If I keep doing it now, it's only because I have some enjoyment out of it. That's it. Because I can't expect to make a living out of it. I can't expect to have success out of it. So all I have left is you're doing it because you enjoy it, and hopefully a couple of people find it useful. That's it. And then I said, you know what? Yes, I'm going to keep doing this. And I kept doing it. And then I started learning more and more as I went, and you keep learning and just one step at a time. And before you know it, you look back and you're like, whoa, how did I get here? But it all starts with that moment where it's like, it doesn't look good, man. And I think when people hit that moment, and that is the walk in the fire moment, that is the trial by fire, the gauntlet. That's the moment where you decide if you love it enough right there. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, it's easy to turn away. It's so easy because you're like, man, look, nah, I'm good. I'm going to go over here, man. Like, this is ridiculous. But if you do love it, then you're like, okay, well, I may not get the success that I thought I would, but I love it enough to be flexible, to just try other things and just keep learning. Hell, I'll shoot commercials. Mm-hmm. I don't even like shooting commercials, and dealing with clients is like, but you know what? At least I'm around it. I'll do that. That's the kind of love you have to have, man.
There's no question, man. I actually I've had that conversation with myself so many times in my career. Like after my book, that whole story came across, and I was like, is this worth it? Like, when you're devastated and broken and, selling comic books on eBay, because you're hiding from the world, that is a moment in your life where, like, am I going to come out of this? Like, how am I going to is this for me? But the question that the answer that always came back is like, what else are you going to do?
I was just going to say that, like, what else are you going to do?
What else were you qualified to do? And then that was the answer that always, for me, I'm sure for you as well. For me, it was always like, all right, sure. What else are you going to do? But now it's going to be like almost 7 years ago when my daughters were born. I had that question again, because at that moment in my life, I was beat up I was doing way too many Eric Robert movies in post. Let's just put it that way, and like really low budget Michael Madsen and Danny Trejo's, and I was dealing with these kind of unscrupulous distributors, and I had to go chase money, and I was just doing the post on all this kind of stuff, and I just kind of was just and this is like a year of this, and I was burnt. And then my daughters came, and I'm like, I don't know, man, am I going to keep doing this? And I asked the question, well, is this for me? Should I do something else? And for whatever reason, the universe said, oh yeah, you could do something else. Why don't you open up an olive oil and vinegar gourmet shop?
That's oddly specific.
Very. Exactly. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. And that was the universe going, this motherfucker, okay. You don't like what you're doing? I'm going to give you a little I'm going to show you what you don't like to do. And I'm going to tie you up for 3 years in a lease that you can't get out of. And that's what happened. And it was the worst 3 years of my entire life. Maybe not the year of my gangster year, but other than the gangster year, second worst 3 years of my life. And it taught me. So when I came out with Indie Film Hustle, it came out right at the tail end of when I was closing that business. So they overlapped. Because I was already like, I got to get out of this. But that taught me, it's like sometimes when you're on your path, sometimes you have to take that detour to realize what your true calling is, what your true mission is in life. And that's where I came back. And I came back with a vengeance. I came back hard, real quick. And it changed my trajectory in life. But
there's nothing like doing something you don't want to do to send you running towards what you love to do. Because I was in the Air Force for 4 years, the same thing. Jet mechanic. I don't even know why I picked that job till this day. Something about like, I should try something new and be.
I saw Top Gun, and this is what happened.
Yeah, you don't pick a job based on like a hunch. I should be more. No, you don't. If you're going to do some mechanics, you need to have been working on cars, and you need to know that you love it before you pick the job. So I picked a job that I just hated. I loved the people I was working with, but I hated the job. So getting out, it's like this soul deadening feeling where you're spending so much time on something you couldn't care less about. It just like cripples you, and it sends you running toward things that, no matter how risky they are, it's better than that feeling you get when you're doing something that you know inside is not for you.
Oh, God. Preach, brother. Preach. I'm sure people listening right now, there's some chills going up people's spines in certain areas, you know, because they might be listening to this or watching this in that job. And I hope this energy gets out to you, that if you are in that deadening job and you're saying, oh man, it's just because I have to pay the bills, you've got to figure something else out. You gotta,
I don't care if you're carving out 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day, you need to find some kind of time to start working toward your dreams and
side hustle
your skill set. Yeah, you have to
start a side hustle first. Like Indie Film Hustle for me was a side hustle at the beginning. I was doing post in the day and an Indie Film Hustle at night kind of thing. And then slowly but surely that side hustle turned into the main hustle. And now it's the one thing I do. And same thing goes for you. You know, you now you do the same thing with your channel and your platform.
And I want to mention this before I forget. And I was having this conversation. I don't remember with who.
Might have been me. It was like 18 hours.
It could have been. It could have been. We have to change our metrics for success.
Yeah, it was with me.
Yeah. It was with me. We have to change how we gauge success, because I think that's an even bigger trap. Because with unrealistic expectations out of the gate, you're already hamstringing yourself for what's to come.
But isn't that what the industry teaches? They teach the sizzle
stories.
Yeah, they all they do is sell the sizzle, and all they do is sell, like film schools sell you on, you're going to be the next Spielberg, you're going to be the next Nolan, and the chances of that happening are so nil. But that's okay. There's only so many guys who are going to be able. How many directors get the opportunity to direct a $200 million movie?
Not many.
I mean, period. In the history of film, how many directors got that opportunity? How many directors got to do a tentpole studio movie or a big budget? Like, how many of them are there?
When you talk about Sundance, you talk about you have a better chance of winning the lottery than getting into Sundance with like sheer numbers versus how many they actually take.
Yeah.
You have the better chance of winning the lottery. But that number, like how many directors actually get to play that in that ball game, that number is less.
Oh, massively less.
You're talking like an infinitesimal fraction of
everybody everyone who wants to be a filmmaker and everyone who wants to be a director.
Yeah, man, it's ridiculously. You're talking about the cream of the cream of the cream of the cream of the cream.
Yeah.
Oh, and not even all those guys are good. It's just they've been able to leverage it. But I mean, that's like, it's almost like a pipe dream to a certain extent, you know.
Right. But the thing is that I think what we talked about was, and if you don't get there, that's okay. There's so many other ways to be fulfilled in the film industry as a filmmaker without having to go after that big dream. And with my story, I was raised in the 90s. I mean, I came up in the 90s when it was the just magical early 90s for independent film. Like every year there was a new Cinderella story. John Singleton, Clerks, Tarantino, Rodriguez, Soderbergh. Like every year there was there was someone new.
Promotion too.
It was a different world back then. So that mentality stuck with me, where I got to have that moment for myself. That's why I got caught up with a mobster trying to make a movie, because I'm like, this is my shot. This is my shot. This is my Rodriguez. This is my, Singleton,
I'm not, 8 Mile,
This is my 8 Mile, baby. This is my shot. Got one shot. But that was the thing. And I finally, in my elder years, as a 44-year-old man, as of this recording, I came to grips with what makes me happy. And don't get me wrong, if I get a call from a studio tomorrow, I'll take that meeting. I'll take that meeting. But at a certain point, Loke, is that really what I want anymore? A perfect story is Mark Duplass and the Duplass brothers. They got called by Marvel to do a Marvel movie, and they turned it down. which goes against.
They knew what came with it.
They knew they're like, I'm going to be locked up for 3 years on one project. I'm not going to have the control about it. And there's going to be nothing but pressure. Sure, I'll get money. Sure, I might open up other opportunities, but that's just not going to make me happy. And that was such an immense message to send out to the world, I believe, to the filmmaking world, because you're like, because everybody else was like, I would have taken it. But that's not his definition of happiness. That's not his definition of fulfillment in the business. So you've got to figure out what that fulfillment is for you and be okay with it not being like, it's like, I'm going to play baseball, but if I don't win a championship every year, it's not worth it. Like, you can't think that way. Like, if I'm going to play
myopic. It's myopic.
It's ridiculous.
And it's also a sign of inexperience. It's a sign of naivety, because there's so many other things out there that you can do. But if you don't know about them, and even better yet, you don't know how you will feel about them, how can you make a judgment on something you don't know about? That's like having an assortment of 10 foods in front of you. The only thing you've had is a cheeseburger. Here you've got ice cream. You've got, all these other great foods, pizza. Yeah. But the only thing you've ever had is a cheeseburger. That's the only thing you've ever heard anybody talking about.
Yeah. So
you're like, well, I don't want ice cream. I mean, it's cheeseburger or bust.
Right.
What? It's not enough bread. Like, it doesn't even look good. Pizza looks awful if you never had it. Like, look at Pete, looks awful.
It does.
I'm not having that. Nope, it's cheeseburger or bust. And that's kind of what I liken it to, is like, you don't know what other things, one, are like, what's available to you, and two, how you will feel about them, and three, the sustainability options to those things. You don't know enough about what's out there to make those snap decisions. So when I hear people say that, myself included, when I was back in that mindset, it was all naivety, because I didn't know what I didn't know. Now I'm in a space kind of like you, where it's like, if Hollywood were to knock on my door tomorrow, sure, I would entertain it. Yeah, sure, let's talk.
I'll have a meeting. I'll take that meeting just purely for the stories alone.
Yeah, I've had them before, actually, with Uncensored. That's a whole nother story. But if it, like, circumstances different and all that, and they knocked on the door, and I was like, yeah, sure, let's talk. But in the back of my mind, though, I always have that walk away where it's like, okay, if the terms aren't right for me, though, I'm doing fine where I am. I don't need you to make a living. I don't need you to make a way for me. I've already made my own way, and I can continue to make my own way. But we can do something together, and if it works, sure. But I don't have to jump on everything offered to me.
And I'll throw a recent story that's happening. I'm actually in talks with different distribution companies for my film On the Corner of Ego and Desire. I've been blessed to have options. And there was one company I really liked, and they're a good company, and they had some really good opportunities for the film, but I walked away from the deal. I walked away from theatrical and other avenues because I was like, you know what, this just doesn't make sense for me. Like, I need certain things to be in place for this deal to make sense to me. And I walked from the deal. Whereas before, filmmakers are so desperate sometimes in the distribution game that they just jump on whatever anybody gives them. And I'm in a very wonderful position where I could just walk away from it because I don't have $500,000 invested in that movie. I made Ego and Desire for, like, I haven't even said this, but I made that movie for about $3,000. So like, it didn't cost me anything to make that movie. So for me,
it's a lean project.
That's a lean ass project, baby. So, I think it was like $3,000 to $4,000 total, like including audio post and everything. And, favors, don't forget, and deferred payments and other things like that. But overall, though, out of pocket, like $3,000 to $4,000. So I can just walk away because I was able to keep my overhead so low that I have the power to just, if I just put it up on IFH TV or I just distribute it myself, I can do that. But I'm working with another distributor and we're going to put it out in other places. But the power to be able to walk away
is huge,
especially when you're negotiating with somebody. Just like, because I just don't like when someone sits down and negotiates with me on something like that. I'll be like, look, dude, this is what I got. And if you don't like it, I'm good, man. It's all good. No hard feelings, but I'm not your normal scenario.
Yeah.
an uneducated.
Not that guy, man.
I'm not that dude. I'm not an uneducated guy who doesn't understand distribution and understand that. Not that this company, by the way, was trying to screw me or anything like that. It's just the deal was not structured in a way that it made sense for me. It was a good deal, but it just wasn't. It wasn't what I wanted. But that has a tremendous amount of power to just literally just go, that's not for me. I'm going to walk away. And if you can get to that place as a filmmaker, my God, that's an immense, beautiful, powerful place to be, that you are in control of your own destiny. Oh my God,
I think you can get that way. You can achieve that, but it's only for the people who love it enough to be elastic.
Yeah.
I did not get into film to become a film school. Just going to be honest with you. My idea of filmmaking wasn't, let me make tip videos online. It took me a long time to grow toward that, because my idea is like, I want to be the next Tarantino. I want to be the next,
Of course.
I make my film. I make my art. I put it out there for people to enjoy it. That was my idea of a filmmaker, right? And it goes back to that having 10 foods in front of you and all you've had is a cheeseburger. All I ever had was a cheeseburger. That's all I thought about film was auteur filmmaking, And, so my journey in YouTube kind of broadened my horizons a little bit. And that was like, hey, I need to promote this film. I need to get out there. This YouTube thing, I'm hearing stuff about it. I did a couple of weeks research and realized, whoa, there's people building huge followings. Why have I not heard of this? Boom, let me just jump in. And I wasn't precious about it at all. I was like, well, I'm going to be going to these film festivals. I'm doing a whole film fest run real soon. If I'm going to start, I have to start now so that I can capture the whole thing from start to finish. And I figured people would jump on the chance to see this is what happens after you make a film. That was my whole pitch. Unbeknownst to me then, that's not even a discoverable thing to start with. But anyways, I just jumped in and I wasn't precious about it. And I didn't think much of it. My whole thing was my film, unsound. This YouTube thing, just a means to an end. But that was the best thing for me because it allowed me to just jump in without thinking too much about it because I cared, but I didn't. It's like it was just a means to an end for this other thing that I've spent all this money on, all this time on. So it was the best thing for me. It allowed me to just jump in. And in doing so, I got to, hey, what's this ice cream thing here? Let me take just a little.
Oh, that's not bad.
That's not bad. What is that again? That's just, okay. And there's this pepperoni thing. I don't even that. Every time I see that, I don't want no parts of that. But, there's just a little piece of sauce on the table here. Let me just, it's kind of like this, but let me take so by just jumping in, I got to kind of just bump into these other things. Mm-hmm. And then sooner or later, it's like, hey, that thing that I thought I would never do that when I see other people doing it, I'm like, why would I do that? That's just, now it's not looking so bad. It's like, right. Hey, I tried it and it came back. And then I saw this other person eating it. And then he looked like he was having a good time. And then it's like, and it allowed me to grow beyond my preconceived idea of what film was and ways to do film and ways to still be involved and ways to give value and be a part of the community. It allowed me to grow into the tips thing, or it's like, hey, and then I did my first tips video and it struck like lightning. And then I see the people and they're like, hey, we really enjoyed what you did. And it was so clear and I was having trouble with this and you really helped shine light on that. And then you get a feeling from that and you're like, wow, this really made a difference in somebody's life. But then it's going back to that. How can you value something you've never touched or seen? Yeah. How do you don't even know what you're missing. So you don't even know what you're missing.
I mean, I'll tell you from my little story of that, which is it took me a little longer than you did, but I made my first short in 2005. It was called Broken, and I did that DVD that had 3.5 hours of making of.
Yeah.
All right, that whole thing. And I sold 5,000 copies of it. But afterwards, we had this conversation. Man, if I would have just kept going on YouTube, boy, I would have owned it. I would have owned the space. There was nobody on YouTube doing it in 2005. But my trailers and some of my behind the scenes are still up on YouTube from 2005, which is hilarious to watch now. But I said to myself, I'm not a film school. I'm not that dude. Why? Because in my mind, I'm like, well, Spielberg doesn't do that.
Auteur.
Yeah, Spielberg doesn't do that. Tarantino didn't do that. all these, Fincher is not that guy. Like, I'm like, I can't.
Fincher's not that guy.
So like, that's the thing. You see, this is how the ego works in your own mind. Is so brilliant. Like, you're having the conversation that you are even in the same sentence as these masters who've been working at their craft for decades of their lives, hundreds of thousands, not 10,000 hours, hundreds of thousands of hours. But then because I didn't do that and I started to go down another road, which is much more egocentric, I'm like, I'm the auteur. By the way, my very first production company, Auteur Pictures. Not joking. Oh yeah. Very first short film.
Bad, it's good.
It's so bad. Auteur Pictures. Look it up. Fantastic. Anyway, so I went off the road and I went on this dark, journey. And then all the way back 10 years, literally 10 years to the day later, I launched Indie Film Hustle. I went full circle, went back to like, I'm going to educate. You
had to grow into it though.
But it didn't take you 10 years to do that. It took me 10 years.
But also social media,
wasn't around back then.
We're also talking about a difference in time too.
Sure. 2005 is
got out of film school. So I was like clawing at everything at this point, just like ravenous, So it's I think a little different in time because YouTube wasn't what it was when I started.
Google didn't even own it.
Because I had the case studies to look at. Yeah. Whereas when you did your thing, you didn't have the case
Nobody
studies.
Knew that thing was going to be what it was.
It wasn't a thing yet.
It's hindsight.
It wasn't killing it yet. But I had people who actually pioneered and did some things. So then when I turned to look at it, I could be like, that guy right there. That's interesting. They crowdfunded an entire web series for how much money?
Yeah.
For what?
Yeah.
But if that wasn't there, I would not have had the idea because I wouldn't have had the case studies to see myself.
That's what I did.
There's potential there.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have been there. You didn't have that. So I think you got to give yourself more credit too. Like, had you seen that,
maybe
I think you would have been like, well, and two, I think another part of the discussion is, it's not that we want to put ourselves on the same level as the greats. It's more like we don't want to ruin our chances of being one of the greats by doing something that could be perceived as less than. I think it's more like that.
Do you remember that there was a moment in time where commercial directors were looked at music video and commercial directors were looked on in Hollywood like literally PAs, like they were horrible filmmakers. Like that's not a real filmmaker. I remember Michael Bay's story with Bad Boys and David Fincher's infamous Alien 3 story of how he got all that stuff in.
He got slapped around.
And Michael Bay literally had to pay $250,000 for a shot because he wanted, and I still remember the shot because I heard it in the commentary. I've never forgot it. There was a shot in Bad Boys where it's towards the end where the plane and there's an explosion out of the plane when they're all fighting and the dude flies out of the plane into the camera, like literally flying out. I
remember that shot.
That was a Michael Bay shot, and he paid $250,000 to keep the crew late to do that. And the next morning, so Jerry Bruckheimer would see it. He had the check that he wrote and put it up in front of the lens, so everyone knew that he paid for that shot right before they shot the shot. And of course, the rest is history. Whether you like Michael or not, we can have a conversation about that later. But
whether you like him or not, you gotta.
But Antoine Fuqua, Spike Jonze, all this amazing group that came out of the commercial world, they played by their own rules. They weren't like, well, Spielberg didn't direct commercials. I'm like, no, but Ridley did, and Ridley did all right, and Tony did all right. They were following a different model. Like Ridley Scott and Tony Scott were the first guys out the gate. They were the first ones, and their first movies weren't pow, 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 They're great films, The Hunger and The Shootist. They're both great films, but it took Ridley a minute or two to do Alien and Blade Runner.
But all of these greats we're talking about, though, they had to do something else before they could get
absolutely.
They all had, with each generation, or I should say a couple generations, that thing changes, right?
It has to.
Yeah, commercials are not the best way anymore. Competition's too high. Just the whole landscape's different. Music videos, that's a whole nother discussion. Like there was a point when that was like
a thing.
the thing, and it's like, ooh, that's your way in. But then times change, the economics change, the business changes, and now that window closes. But a group of guys got in from that window. Mm-hmm. Then there was a time when like Sundance was the way to get in, and then that's how you got the
that whole crew, everybody,
the whole Sundance crew, where it's like there was a window where Sundance was just starting and it was in its little infancy, and like it wasn't this giant brand. So they didn't have like the paralyzing number of films coming in. It was only like 200, 400, whatever.
Yeah,
so
and also technology wasn't there either to do that at the time either. So you had to shoot film. So
your chances were a lot higher. And then there was a group of people who got in that way. Boom. But look
at the film school generation. Look at Scorsese and Spielberg and Milius and Coppola and all that. That was a time.
They came through.
The studio system was collapsing, and they gave basically the keys to the inmates to run the asylum.
I'm spacing on his name right now. Where he was Roger.
I know you're talking about the kid stays in the picture. That producer, right.
Yeah, where he's just like notorious for just like we're spending next to nothing and we're just cranking these out like a factory.
Yeah.
And so many filmmakers came through that. Scorsese, like they went through his film school.
Oh, Roger Corman.
Yeah, Roger Corman. Yeah. But that was another time where
Ron Howard, Jack Nicholson.
Guess what? How many people were like, I don't like Roger Corman's movies. I don't want to do that. That's not film. But they were like, hey, I'll do it. I'll learn on somebody else's dime. Sure, I gotta shoot it for next to nothing, but at least I'm shooting, right?
So I think so. All right. So now we just discussed something I think is really interesting. We were talking about generational openings. Like there's opportunities per generation. If the studio system wasn't collapsing in the 70s and Easy Rider hadn't shown up to, that cost $150,000 and made millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars, and the studio said, wait a minute, we have no understanding what the audience wants anymore. Let's get these young.
We're out of touch.
Yeah, we're out of touch. Let's get this Spielberg cat and this Scorsese cat and this Coppola guy, and let's give them the keys to the castle. That was a moment in time. Then, like you said, then there was the 80s. Then there was the 90s.
And there was the music video time. That was the 80s. The music video and
it was 80s, 90s.
It was commercials 80s, first, and then the music videos wave, where a whole bunch of music video directors came in.
Yeah. There was. You're right.
The doors closed. That era was over, and then another era opened up, and then the Sundance thing, where you start hearing a whole bunch of Cinderella stories, but it was all Sundance. That was early 90s.
Early to mid 90s is where all that's when the heyday.
So much of the music video stuff anymore. Then it was all about like these success stories. Kevin Smith, and his boom, 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 boom. And now that window I feel is closing. You still have the outliers that still come through every here and there. Like I'm sure there's still people who come through from the music video world.
Yeah.
But not at the volume as when the window was hot and wide open.
So my question to you is, being a YouTuber, and what do you see? Where do you see? What's the window right now to get in?
That's a tricky question, because I think we're in an interesting time now where all of the other times, the business model was the same. Because technology changed it. It was
DVDs. DVD was a different thing in the 90s, but generally speaking,
the foreign sales market, like things were up and down, but the way things happened was the same. And I think we're entering an interesting time now where the biggest kid on the block isn't the studios anymore.
The biggest kid on the block?
It's Netflix. I mean, you look at, what the studios spent in 2015 or 16, like the total number they spent, like combined to make movies was like $2 billion. Combined, right?
Yeah.
And the total number of
projects and things, yeah.
Yeah, now talking like the indie film space, guess how much money they spent combined? Like, including all of the films that didn't make money, too.
Yeah, how many?
It's only like less than 2% make money or something. Mm-hmm. Guess how much money they spent?
How much?
$2 billion. Guess how much money Netflix spent that same year?
That would be 6 to 8 billion, if I remember correctly, something like that. 11 billion. Look at that. Yeah.
They spent 11 to produce content. That's what they spent. So like that tells you so much about where the market is right now. Who's really minting the dollars and what business model is actually making sense?
Right.
The studios aren't really. The studio model has been throwing darts in the dark the whole time, but because of the technology at the time and the internet not being where it is, or not even being around up to a certain point, right? So it allowed for that business model to thrive off scarcity, off of exclusivity, you know what I mean? But then as soon as the internet opened up and then better business models came along, like Netflix, data, analytics, you can't beat that. You can't beat that. So now, you know, Netflix doesn't have to throw darts in the dark, bro.
No, they know exactly. They know exactly what people want to watch, when they're watching it, how long they're watching it.
We got stats, baby.
We got stats. we got stats all day.
The viewer behavior patterns of all 44 million or however many, 100 something million subscribers, 146 or something million. We got data on all of them. All of them. It's just a matter of mix and match at that point. And then we also know how much to spend on it, because they can afford to take a niche topic and say, oh yeah, well we'll throw 10 million at that, you know. But they have the metrics to tell them what's worth putting a ton of money into and what's not. Whereas the studios never had that. That's why every single time they come out, we're swinging for the fences. Every single time. Because you can't capitalize on niche markets without data.
Well, as of this recording, that new Ben Affleck action movie is coming out on Netflix. I forgot. It's like a heist movie. It's 100. It has to be like at least 100 million plus movie, easily. I still am fascinated with the Christmas movie they just get, the Kurt Russell Christmas movie. Did you see it? On Netflix? But you saw the promotions for it. Yeah, he's playing Santa and stuff. It was directed by Chris Columbus. Chris Columbus, who directed Home Alone and the first two Harry Potters, you know, among other things that he directed in his career. And I looked at that, I was like, they're going to make money off of that movie for decades, because every Christmas, my kids are going to want to watch that movie now because we loved it. We must have seen it 2 or 3 times when it came out. And I looked at it, I'm like, that movie would have, if it would have gone theatrical, easily would have pulled over $300 million. It's
seasonal.
But it was,
to go back to your question though, about how things have changed, or about the business models changing the landscape. I think we're at a time now where I don't think it's fair to look at like the classical Hollywood model as the penultimate anymore.
It's not anymore. It hasn't been for a while.
No, it's just the viewership in the Oscars every year is going down.
And this year's is going to be horrible. Ugh.
There's so many other things showing that the interest is kind of going, but also
the generational thing too, man. Like, the millennials coming up and stuff. They're
compete for your attention.
They're also changing the way their value system is different. They're like, I don't want to work for a company for 30 years and get a gold watch and retire. That's not my dream. My dream is to go to Bali for 2 months out of the year and then work from home. Like and I don't need to make $5 million a year. I'm good with making $100,000 a year if that keeps me in the lifestyle that I like. Like, that mentality is changing everything. So now viewership is like, I need instant gratification. I need things that are catered to me. Because I remember when I worked at the video store in high school, I watched everything that came out every week, which was approximately 3 to 4, maybe 5 movies a week were being released. I still remember very clearly. I need multiple lifetimes to watch all the content that's being created just this year. Just this year, let alone all the stuff that's being created and will continue to culminate. There's entire series that I've never touched or watched, but I know that are really good. So there's no lack of good content. Now it's got to be curated, niched content that I want to watch. That's why I opened up IFH TV. You know, it's a niche.
You're able to thrive on the niche because of data. Correct. And 2, data-driven decisions are everything. We live in the age of data-driven decisions. Analytics. The people who are successful on YouTube, show me someone who has over 1 million subscribers on YouTube that does not understand how to look at analytics. And also, on that other hand, I can show you more examples than I know of people who are not successful in YouTube, and they probably don't even know how to look at their analytics, because it tells you everything. It literally tells you everything. You want to know how come people aren't clicking, or how long they're clicking, or what you're losing them on. If you don't know how to look at your analytics, you're missing the boat. It's telling you right there. They don't have to comment in your comments and tell you why, because I don't know what the ratio was, or the percentage, but like it was like 99.7 or 99.9% of customers, if they're not happy with something, they just go. They don't say anything.
Right.
If you go to a shoe store and you have a Nike shoe you pull off the rack and you don't like it, you don't go up to the teller and say, this is what I don't like about the shoe. You just don't buy it.
Right.
You just go. And it's the same thing for online. The only time you start getting into all the hate and all that is when you've actually gotten somewhere, because now it's worth it. It's worth my time to tear you down now because it gives me visibility. That's the only time you start to get that. But if you haven't gotten anywhere yet, you don't even get haters, bro. Like they find your video and they're like, "Oh man, this ain't what the streets don't want this. What is this?
The streets don't want. You should get a T-shirt, sir. The streets don't want this right now.
It, man.
Hashtag streets don't want this.
If they don't like it, or if they don't believe in what you're saying, or if you get facts wrong, whatever, they don't say anything. They just go. I'm out of here. That's it.
Right.
But your analytics tell you everything. Even when like people are like begging for feedback. Give me feedback. Give me feedback. How can I get better? It's so hard to get feedback. Bro, it's all in your analytics, man. It's all there. 20 seconds in, you said this one thing. Boom, huge drop. Let me go and see what oh, wow. Why are they dropping from that? Quick Google search. Oh, there's a whole fact I got wrong. No wonder. Mm-hmm. People are looking at me like I'm an idiot. It's like it's all there. And
do you think that filmmakers and moving forward, because there's so many filmmakers, so many screenwriters, so many content creators coming out of film schools and coming into the marketplace now, who have this old mentality, this mentality of the old way of doing things? I did for a long time. The classic Hollywood.
Spend everything you're worth for the dream.
Yeah, all that you throw, you risk everything on the one movie, as opposed to, I always tell people, I'm like,
reach my house.
Like if someone tells me like, I'm going to give you $250,000 to make a movie, I'm like, great, I'm going to go make 5 movies. Like that's my mentality. I'm going to diversify, so I have complete control of my creative output, and I nullify the risk. And that's a business model that can make sense, that can roll. But if you roll it all on the one, and you're like, well, I need 250 to make the story play. I'm like, well, then is this your first one? Don't do that, man.
It doesn't make sense. It's like this. Okay, I want to start a business. We'll just put film on the table for now. I want to start a business, and
selling olive oil and vinegar, let's say.
Yeah. Well, you know more about that, so I don't even know where to. But something like that. It's like I want to start a business. But in order to start this business, I need $500,000.
Sure.
So I have to go talk to lawyers, doctors, whoever
Banks,
I know, with a business plan.
Sure.
And convince them of this new software that doesn't exist. Oh, and by the way, my experience with software is like this.
Right.
Very minimal. I just learned it last year. I just graduated.
I watched somebody.
Whatever school.
I saw somebody code once.
Yeah, I saw somebody code once, but I have to go talk people into giving me $500,000. Or you can just say like some pilot product or something that you have to actually get developed, or, whatever. There's a difference between, there's a way to do it and there's a way to do it. Like going out and trying to convince people for $500,000 on a theory, because that's all your stuff is a theory.
You're right.
You don't know if it's going to work until it's in the marketplace, and then the market's going to decide. There's so many films that people are like, yeah, everybody's going to love it. You get it in the marketplace, flops. Then there's films that everybody's like, why in the world did this thing take off? Everybody's got question marks, but the market wanted to see it. It's the same thing on YouTube. How many people do you see on YouTube doing so well? And you're like, what is it about? I don't get it. But the market loves it. And then there's content and channels that's like, man, this is really good stuff. They really need more views, but the market doesn't think so. So you don't know what the marketplace wants. You will never know what the marketplace wants looking in from the outside. The only way is to actually have a product that you insert into the marketplace and you see what it does. That's the only way to figure out, and you collect data. So for that guy who has that $500,000 business plan for this theory, and he begs people for 5 years.
I was about to say, at least 5-year, 10-year process, right?
Yeah. Maybe he gets it, maybe he doesn't. But if he does get it, he, makes the product or whatever, puts it in the marketplace, and it flops. Guess what happens? You're back to square one, only worse. You lost a whole lot of people money now. Now you're in jail, not literally.
And now it's not theory. They know that you can't do it.
Yeah. So that's one way to do it, and it sucks because you're taking all the risk. There's nothing to ameliorate that. There's no insulators. There's no nothing. It's pure, unadulterated risk. like milk of magnesia, straight up extract. You're putting the pipe in the tree and the straight sap's coming out. Risk. Okay. The other way, this is all it is. Like risk pouring, pumping through your veins, just risk.
It's risk.
Wake up. What you want? I just want risk.
It's like mine was like
coffee.
Mine was like utter fear, and yours is like risk.
Risk. Yeah. It's just pure risk for risk's sake. Just pure risk.
Because of the dream, because of ego, because of
and that's the way that everybody thinks that it's always been done, even though time and time again it's not how it's always been done. That's just the way it's projected to think, even in film. The other way is minimum viable product. The other way is lean projects. Yes. You know, just like with business, they say the lean startup. You can go and you can shop around an idea that you need $500,000 for, or you can start a lean business that you can start right now with something that you have access to. So if you're talking about creating software and you have limited experience, well, how about you shelf that now? Don't get rid of it. Just shelf it for now. And think about another business model that you can start, that you have access to, that you could start with your own money. And that's how you got the guy who, not Napster, he started printing people CDs for them. That's all he did. You know, and they were like, oh, you print CDs. And then a whole bunch of people started, and then boom, huge business. Right. You know, it's like starting with something accessible that you don't have to go find money for. The lean startup. Because what happens? You can get into it for no money. So what does that allow you to do?
Experiment.
Make a product. Boom. What does the market do? Does it like it? Does it not? And even if it doesn't like it right away, you can hit them again. You can Gatling gun things out and make tweaks and zero in on what the market wants to see. And then once you find it, you're done. You just rinse, wash, repeat, and scale. But you have something that works. And that's the benefit of the lean startup. So if we take the business side off and then we go back to film, it's the exact same thing. Only you replace a business plan with a pitch and a script. I'm going to go and convince all my friends and family to give me $300,000 because this is so good. It'll get into Sundance or Tribeca or whatever. Everybody's going to love it. It's going to launch my filmmaking career. You want to be, it's like the same thing. You have the guy who has the expensive pitch, and he can spend 5-7 years looking for money for that pitch. And then you have the guys who are like, you know what? I do have my expensive ideas, but I'm going to shelf them for now. Let me do a film idea that is accessible to me. I'm going to use resource filmmaking. I'm going to work with what I have. I got my buddy's pool over here that's empty. Looks interesting. Let me put that in the feature. I've got this abandoned school bus over here. That's cool. Let me write that in the feature. I have one actor who's actually decent and a whole bunch of people who couldn't act their way out of a wet paper bag. Okay, well, you're the star, and the rest of you guys, I'm going to cut all your roles down. And this guy who barely talks and looks crazy, I'm just going to have you looking crazy in a corner. I'm going to write everything toward what I have, and I'm going to make something out of that. And guess what? Now I have MVP, minimum viable product. Test that out in the marketplace. The market either wants to see it or it doesn't. If it doesn't want to see it, guess what? I can do that all day. It didn't cost me anything.
Correct. And that's, like I said, if you're lucky enough to get a $200,000, $250,000, make 5, 6, 7 movies with that money. Yeah. And then I promise you on movie 2 or 3, you figured out something, hopefully, but you're still just trying things out. And like I did with my first movie, Meg was made for about $5 or $6 grand. And then my second movie went lower. I went down to $3 or $4 grand. And I'm like, I could take risks. I can enjoy it. I could see it. And if the marketplace doesn't like it,
it's not a loss. It's not a hit.
But if it meant something to me as an artist, all good. I'm creating art. I'm creating a product that I'm happy with and I'm cool with. And it doesn't have to make them $220 billion. If I made a $4,000 movie and it makes me 10 or 15 grand over the course of the next 3 years, that's a success wherever you look at it.
That's a net victory.
Is that a viable career path? Is that a viable business? Yes, if you're able to do that 4 or 5 times a year, and then you also do other side hustles, and you also create other avenues, like you create a school about teaching you how to do that kind of film, something like what you do and what I do, where now you're able to. It's all relative, and you have to create ancillary products. You could create other things.
It's all leverage, and I think. For the people who are stuck in that, because the business world has the same problem.
Yeah.
They have the exact same problem where people have these pipe dreams and it's all about like, I can't do anything unless I have this. And it's like, it goes back to that one most important question, really. for the entrepreneurs and for the filmmakers. Like, if you're an entrepreneur at heart and your goal is to own your own business and work for yourself, it doesn't matter how it comes to you. You're going to be open to trying a lot of different things because your main goal is to be an entrepreneur and work for yourself. So you're not going to be so married to one idea that if you don't get that idea, well, I'm just going to keep trying until I start. It's like, well, no, because that's not your goal. Your goal is to work for yourself. So if you can't do this thing now, well, I'm going to look for something else that I actually can do because I want to work for myself. That's my goal. So for those people who are shopping those business plans around that are completely unrealistic theories, they're not really entrepreneurs at heart. No, they're not really. They are married to an idea. That's it. And if it works or if it fails, that's it. And if it does fail, they usually don't have any other ideas. That's all they got. Right. That's their one shot. And they're like, well, it didn't work out. Okay, well, I'm just going to do something else then. But for the entrepreneurs, there is no choice. And that's the same thing for the filmmakers. It's like you're either a filmmaker or you're not. If you're a filmmaker, then your goal is to make films, period. You have to make them. You must make them. You have stories you want to tell. You feel alive when you're on set, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So if you have a project that's $500,000 and you can't shoot it right now, you're not going to spend 5 years looking for that money. You're going to be like, well, that's great, but I need something. Let me figure something else out or something for fun to shoot. I just need something else to shoot because I'm not happy if I'm not shooting. That's what a filmmaker sounds like. Somebody who's just married to an idea. Oh, yeah, I'll spend the next. I have friends that still doing this, man. And it's like, bro, before I started YouTube, I'm not saying no name. Before I started YouTube, right? This guy went to film school, graduated before me. He had this idea and he's like, yeah, I got this great idea. It's my passion. It's going to cost $300,000 to make. Cool. Awesome. He graduates. And then I graduate a year later. He goes off to Europe and does some more like film training or something. I forget which school he went to. I got out. Shot a feature, started a YouTube channel, really grinded hard on that, did the Film Fest circuit with the feature at the same time, built the subscribers up to over 100,000, made several short films, then dropped that feature, and then dropped another feature. I released 2 features in 1 month, 2 feature-length films in 1 month.
Nice.
Past 300,000 subscribers. And then recently I had met up with this guy again, and he was doing different things. And we grabbed a beer and we talked. I was like, yo, so what's up? This guy was selling the same ticket, man. The same ticket. He's like, bro, yeah, that idea, I've been working on the script and everything. And, I was like, why haven't you shot that yet? Well, I want to approach this like a real filmmaker. Like, this is a real God. This isn't, I don't want no backyard filmmaking. No, this is a real film. I need at least $300,000, man. I can't make it happen for less than $300,000, man.
And no, it hurts. It makes my ass pucker. I mean, it's just.
Oh man, you will never make it. You have no track record. Who's going to trust you with $300,000 and you have no track record? You have no work to show for yourself.
Right.
Nothing.
Right. No, there's no question. I mean, you see it on Shark Tank every week. Every week you see it on Shark Tank. You see these entrepreneurs come in with these insane ideas. You're like, yeah, and then like we have an evaluation of $25 million. You have $50 in sales. How can you, in God's green earth, do that? But you're right. There is such a mirror image with filmmakers and entrepreneurs because they have this. Because right now it's extremely cool to be an entrepreneur. It's extremely cool to be a filmmaker. Where
they're both buzzwords now. But
by the way, if you look back a generation or two back, what were the 2 cool things to be? A doctor and a lawyer.
Oh yeah.
Remember that was the thing. Like you gotta go be a doctor or a lawyer.
Or a programmer. I remember that one.
But that was later.
That's gone now. That's later, yeah.
That was later. I'm talking about like 2 generations back. Like that's all you heard. You could be a doctor, lawyer, doctor, lawyer, doctor, lawyer. And nowadays,
wasn't it accountant too? Yeah.
Or an accountant. Like if you're like, well, if you can't be a doctor or lawyer, I guess you could be an accountant.
You handle the money of the doctor or the lawyer, and you're good. Yeah.
Exactly. But now things have changed. So now it's like the entrepreneur is the rock star, and the filmmaker is the rock star. And it's so funny. I think Gary Vee says it so clearly. He's like, I have actors. I have huge movie stars, huge athletes, huge people in other industries, and they all want to be entrepreneurs. They all want to own their own business. They all want to create their own brands. They all want to do that because that's the thing at this moment in time. It is to be that thing. And I don't think it's going away anytime soon because it's giving.
It's a perception of freedom.
It is a perception of freedom. I mean, even though sometimes you create a cage for yourself.
Yeah. Even though it's not, because it's more work, but it is freedom if you love it. But if you don't really love it, you can create a cage for yourself real easy.
I'm sure in YouTube you've seen burnouts on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
People that like got a big following and they just felt like I have to keep doing this because this is what I get paid for. But then they just have little burnouts.
I think the problem with YouTube is it's still young yet. It's actually not a problem. It's still young yet. And so we're seeing, we've only had 2 real cycles to see what happens with these big brands and their life cycles and and what happens.
Like when are the Kardashians going to go away? I mean, seriously.
Oh, man, they're hitting on so many value points. You know, I personally am not like a huge Kardashian fan, but when you talk about a brand like that, they've tapped into the untappable. Somehow, some way, by accident, I'm sure.
Sold their soul to the devil.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. They sold their soul to the devil.
They've tapped into the untappable. Like there's different arms of value that they offer. Like I'm not saying you're going to learn how to be a genius watching the show. I'm not saying that at all. But they do have different arms of value that they offer because you can't reach that level with only one prospect, with only one value proposition. You have to have multiple. You have to be multiple things to multiple people.
And they have so many offsprings. They have so many siblings and kids, and like there's something for everybody.
Exactly. You have to be like when you talk about Oprah and all that. Like Oprah means different things to different people.
Right.
That's why she's Oprah. That's why her reach is so broad. To one person, she represents honesty and truth, and she gets the truth out of people. To another person, she represents therapy and a counsel. To another person who may have weight issues, Oprah is a representation of an escape. Like this woman had the same issues I did, and she was able to accomplish. Another person, she's African American, and look at what she can do, and I'm black, and I can do it too. Like you have to have different tiers of value to reach those levels. So something like the Kardashians, they've managed to do it. They will forever be studied by marketers and people forever. You know,
they're still going stronger than ever. It's insane,
especially with the makeup. Oh man, as soon as they hit the makeup market, yeah, they're here to stay.
I mean,
if they're star fades, the makeup won't.
We're talking about $1 billion brands here. Like that's who they are. They're a $1 billion brand. Whether you like them or not, you got to respect the hustle, man. I mean, got to respect it.
You have to respect it. And so we're finding on YouTube, though, I shouldn't say we, because it's more like I don't have like a staff of people who are all thinking about YouTube, you know, but I guess I say we in the sense of the community of YouTube, because, you know, I listen to other YouTubers, some bigger, some smaller, and, you know, you hear other people's observations about it. And it kind of echoes the same thing. Like if you have a brand that only has one value proposition and it happens to be connected to like a zeitgeist, right? Like One Direction's in, and then you have this brand that pops up and he's like, I'm a One Direction fan. And so I get all the girls who are One Direction fans and they all follow me. And then, you know, I happen to be gay or whatever. So then they follow whatever, but it's like your only prop is this one thing. That's it. Everything gets old, bro. Everything gets old, man. So that life cycle is about 4 years. First couple of years, it's like skyrocket. It's a shooting star. And it's like, whoa, this dude's amazing. And he's so charming. He's so charismatic. And wow. Cool. But the only value he offers is these confessional type, story time type, watch me be cute, watch me be like me, and you tune in for me, cool. And every here and there I talk about you, and I want you to be empowered by watching me. Yeah, cool. But it's all just confessional content. That's it. So the audience that rocks with you, they eventually grow up, right? And they go to college and they get other priorities, have kids. So they kind of grow out of you, right? Because you haven't changed. You're offering the same value. You're not growing up with them. Your value's not changing. So they outgrow you. And the new generation usually hates whatever the generation before them was into. There's rarely a time when there's a mutuality between what, except you talk about Michael Jackson or
the Beatles. Yeah.
That crosses generations, obviously.
Sure.
but you're also talking about unicorns.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
You're talking about unicorns, okay? Usually the generation underneath doesn't like anything of the generation before. So the people who were rocking with you have outgrown you, and the people underneath you are not going to mess with you anyway. So what happens?
But do you agree that if you're able to create evergreen content, that is something that is of value no matter what generation you're from or where you come from? Because there are brands out there that are based around inspiration, or let's go into the self-help world. Like Gary Vee, I think is going to be around for a while.
Right.
And that
Gary Vee, it's not just evergreen. It's the execution.
Yes.
I can make a tip video tomorrow and I could say 100 filmmaking tips you must know before you die. And then the video could just be me sitting in a chair talking to a webcam. Here's 100 tips. Monotone voice, whatever. It's evergreen, sure.
It's execution, baby.
Yeah, it's the execution. And within the execution are those tiers of value.
Right.
What do you represent? What's the charm? Do people see that they can get a beer with you? Is the information actually good? Do you have experience with that information? Or are you just talking from somebody who's learning? It's okay if you're just learning, but you have to be upfront about that. Don't talk about stuff you actually don't know about, because that'll get you too. But it's the execution. Within the execution, that's where you fall into the tiers of value, the thresholds. Like there is vlogging on YouTube, and then there's Casey Neistat.
Oh, you read my mind.
Yeah. There's the before Casey era, and then there's the after Casey era, right? Before Casey, vlogging was, hey, I go to the grocery store, I'm looking at an eggplant, and I crack a joke about it. And it's just very informal and yada da da. Casey takes it and he introduces a whole cinematic drone shot, cut, professional edit, just, trick animation, stop motion, this, flip flap time lapse before you look it over here, look at the screen over there. Completely changed vlogging. But it's not just because he was a good vlogger. He's also really charismatic. He's also very stylish. He also gives a lot back to the community. He also makes it a point to be a representative of the YouTube community, talking about the biggest issues that affect the YouTube community. And he's a tech guy on top of that. So he's always talking about the latest tech. And he actually uses the latest tech in his vlogs, unlike a lot of other tech people where they talk about all this tech, but they don't use any of it. Oh, I'm just unboxing. Look at this great thing. It's so great. Look, I'm unboxing. Okay. Oh, here's the latest drone. It's unboxing. Cool. Okay. But they don't use any of it. Casey actually uses it because he vlogs with it. So, when you start getting into the details, what do you find? All of these tiers of value. So he can mean different things to different people. And that's why he's where he is. It's more than just stellar vlogs.
So how do you translate that to a filmmaker? Because all this value. Because I've always said many ways to for filmmakers to kind of add value is there's multiple ways of doing it with a film. So you do a film, you create ancillary products, you create online courses. I always use the vegan chef example. Like if you're making a romantic comedy about a vegan chef meeting a meat eater, and chaos ensues. Why?
You're talking about a filmpreneur.
A filmpreneur, exactly. But let me ask you though, don't you think that
for sure,
moving forward in the indie space, if you are not a filmpreneur or a filmmaker who's an entrepreneur, you're not going to make it, right? Right.
Because you're going to get in your own way. My opinion or my leaning is this, first and foremost, for the new filmmakers, your most important thing should be putting one foot in front of the other and changing your metric for success. First and foremost, your metric of success cannot be the red carpet or my name in the marquee. Dead. That has to stop immediately. You need to reevaluate. Your new metric of success should be, what did I learn today and what will I learn tomorrow? Period. I don't mean how many podcasts can I listen to? How many YouTube videos can I watch? No, pick your stuff up and go make stuff. That's the only way you're going to get it. Actually make things and do it lean. So that's number one. You have to reevaluate your metrics for success. 2, lean projects. We got to cut all this mess out with we already talked about it, going and looking for money and begging and these Kickstarter campaigns for your first short film. Why are we running Kickstarter campaigns for your first short film?
That you need $53,000 for.
Why? like you're just going to make a whole bunch of mistakes that you could have made for free. Mm-hmm. You have to make the mistakes. There's no shortcut to experience. You have to make mistakes, period. You learn the most. So we need to lean these projects out. We need to reevaluate how we look at filmmaking. We need to say, okay, my first 5 projects are not my career projects. These are skill builder projects. So let me get a couple of friends. I'm going to shoot a scene, beginning, middle, end, call it a short film, and work on tension or work on whatever. Or maybe this is my first time messing with a camera. Let me just frame shots and work on camera angles and just be in the space. But we have to shift gears away from this immediate career stuff to skill building. And what am I learning right now? And how do I keep this going? Because when we're talking about all those tiers of value, you don't get there until you start with just learning your crap first, you know? And we can't hide behind our films anymore. We have to be in front of our films. We have to be brands now, because your brand is going to outlast your work. Your brand is going to go further than your work can ever go, because the relationship, the value, the connection is deeper. And if you mess up on a film, you can fall back on your brand. Whereas if you don't have a brand, you know, you go make a film, you spend 3 years on it, launch it out there, and it falls flat on its face. Well, if you don't have a brand, you don't have anything to fall back on. That's just it. You just made something and it sucked, and you can't do anything else with that thing. It just doesn't go anywhere. But if you've got a brand, you can fall back and say, hey, yeah, I made this film, didn't work out. This is what I learned. This is what you can learn. Hey, by the way, let's all talk about how it sucked. I'll do a reaction video talking about how, you know, it's like you can do more with it and you'll get even more followers from that, you know, but
no, without question. And I'll use not an indie example, but I'll use an example of a brand that we all know, Spielberg, right? So Spielberg is a brand all in itself, right? A huge brand, right? So he had made Sugarland Express, then Jaws, then Close Encounters, right? Hit. Well, Sugarland was a small thing, but you know, Jaws kind of knocked them out of the park, and Close Encounters also as well. Then he made 1941, which was, and not many people remember 1941, but he directed 1941, which was a huge bomb, just massive bomb on Spielberg's, you know, resume. But what happened? I'm sorry?
It was a black eye.
It was a black eye, right? And all of a sudden, the Golden Boy wasn't so golden, but he had a brand. He fell back on that. Then what did he do right afterwards? Raiders of the Lost Ark. And then E.T., and then the rest is, as they say, continues.
But see, brands were built differently back then, and if you had the leverage of the media, you were in there. But now, because of the economics of the social media space, it's so noisy now because everyone can do it. So it's extremely noisy. So now you have to know how to build a brand for yourself for cheap. Usually that means leveraging micro content, because like with the days before, it's like, well, if you're in the studio system, you get in a movie or whatever. All right, here's a press run. You're like, boom, everybody knows you like that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It was a lot easier to make it was easier if you're within the studio system back then. You could make a name for yourself fairly quickly.
Hit the talk show circuit. Boom. You're in there.
You're done.
And now that's different, though. It's totally different. The game has changed now, but it's changed for the better, because now it's democratized it for everybody. But it also means more responsibility. So if you want to build a brand, you have to take that initiative to learn how to do it and how to connect with people and how to get value,
educate yourself,
extract value to build. And also, like to your point, also with film entrepreneurship, I think whether you like it or not, that's where things are. Because in order to cut through that noise nowadays, you need a few times at bat. This whole one hit knock out of the park and I got all this money. If you have a rich family, great. But then there's so many stories of people who had means and they made a film and it didn't work.
Oh, yeah.
So you need more times at bat, and you need to give yourself time to learn your craft and learn about yourself too. Like I've been in film for a while. I've done a lot of different shorts, and I feel like I'm only really falling into what I understand to be my voice recently. Mm-hmm. You know, and sometimes your voice isn't so much of your style. Sometimes your voice is the things you choose not to do.
Right.
Sometimes your voice is the way you choose not to shoot that informs the stories you like to tell. Like, you know, for instance, you know, I did Unsound for 7 years, and I just poured my soul into that movie, and I expected it to be my flagship and all that. And it's very successful in its own right. Mm-hmm. Very successful. But what I expected to happen did not happen.
Of course.
And I think that experience affected my voice as a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. I appreciate the stories. I will always want to tell heartfelt stories that mean things to people. Yes. But do I want to spend a whole lot of money in 7 years on something that I don't even know is going to get me to the next level? No. I mean, I've been shooting microfilms and short films, and I'm having more fun doing that than trying to shoot a feature. I can build a business around that. I can have fun and work with my friends doing that. I can take more risks doing that, because when you're spending 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, $100,000 on a feature, you're not thinking about risks, man.
No.
You're like, this got to work, bro. Like, you know, but when you shoot a short with friends, or, you know, you shoot a short and you just spend $200, you can take risks. Hey, I don't know if this person's good at acting. They might not have the look I'm going for, but you know what? Come on in, man. Like let's get this, man. Let's learn it. And I'm going to learn a lot in the process, but you can take risks doing that. And I enjoy the freedom of leaner projects. I really do. And I think it's made its way into my voice now. It really has. I'm happy doing smaller projects. Genuinely happy.
I mean, we talked about this a bit too, is like redefining what success is for you. And we both said the same thing. Like, you're happy doing small films. I am extremely happy making my micro budget feature films and building out my online business. And they feed into each other. And I've never been happier in my life professionally than I am now. Like, I don't even have to do post, thank God, and work with clients if I don't want to. I could do whatever I want, whenever I want. And that kind of freedom is, I cannot tell you it's just, you know, I get up in the morning, I jump out of bed running back here to hang out with Yoda in the back, you know, and just chilling and just getting ready to do my day's work, man, because I love it. And then I'm like, you know, maybe I could go shoot a feature this next month. And I'm like, I'll pull $5,000 out or I'll pull $10,000 out and go make a movie. And that's that freedom. And what do we want as filmmakers? We want that. We want to be able to put food on our table. I don't care about having a Tesla. I don't care about having a big giant house on the top of the Hollywood Hills. I don't care about going to parties or having the latest gear or any of that stuff. I care about making art that's important to me, that I can, and also providing value to the audience that I've cultivated. And if I can provide value and be of service to that audience while I'm able to be an artist, Jesus, man, isn't that the dream? Yeah.
Freedom, autonomy, and there's also a little bit of the be careful what you wish for too. Because I think that, you know, and you've talked to producers and things as well as I, you know, you see people who are very successful in the industry and you're like, oh man, what must it be like? I don't know. And you get to talking to them and you realize, man, there's so much fear they have to deal with the industry and the people and the culture, and it just oozes out of their body, fear. And you're like, wow, I don't think I want that. I don't think I want that at all. Like, to be living in fear, it's like you've reached this status where you can raise, you know, so many hundreds of thousands of dollars at any given time with your connects and all that. But there's a price that comes with that. It's not all roses and sunshine. Like, there's another side to that I think people don't realize until, if they're fortunate enough to get there. And then they're like, whoa, this is not what I thought it would be.
Oh, absolutely.
Now all of a sudden I want something else.
No, and look, we're not saying that, you know, it's okay to have dreams of being successful and getting into that system and doing all that.
Just be aware there's always more to it.
And you also have to be balanced. There has to be balance in your life. Like, if you're working all the time and you are married and you never see your kids and you never see your wife and your personal life is gone to crap and your body is horrible because you don't have time to work out because you're chasing the dream and all this, you have to have a holistic plan for your entire life that includes mind, body, spirit, career, love, social. There's all these different areas of your life that you need to have balance on, education, all these other things that make you a whole person. And so many people in our industry are so unbalanced and so in one direction. So I know guys who are super rich, who are extremely successful in the business, but they're miserable efforts, man. Like they just do not, like they're angry, they're bitter, but they live in these huge houses, drive all these cool cars, hang out with all this, the big celebrities and stuff. But at the end of the day, they're miserable. They're alone. Is that
unfulfilled?
Yeah. You are not fulfilled? Yeah, sure. You made it in one spectrum, one pillar of your life. Yes, I am a filmmaker. I'm making $1 million a year doing filmmaking. And I work on set, I work on TV shows, I work on this or that, blah, blah, blah. But the rest of my life is crap. So is that worth it? Like what? That's a thing that no one talks about. And you really got to kind of understand that if you don't have fulfillment in all avenues of your life, you are an unbalanced individual. And you will be unhappy. If you can never lock down a partner in one way, shape, or form because you're always consumed with your work, you're going to live a lonely, miserable life, even if you're rich, famous, all of that stuff. Why do you think that we see all these crashes of all these people that we thought were completely successful? And then you see suicides and you see drug overdoses and you see all this stuff. Why? Because they're trying to cope with not being balanced in all aspects of their life. And it's brutal. And I think changing those dynamics of success really is the first key to, like, you know what? I don't need $1 million a year. I'm okay. I need enough to put food on my table and make my life comfortable. And
I think the trick with that though is it takes you time to learn enough about yourself to learn what you actually need and what you don't. And I think that's another thing. When you're starting out, you think that you have to have the big movie and the cloud and all. You think that you have to have that to be happy as a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. But you don't know enough about what else there is out there or enough about yourself to make an educated guess of what you actually need. Because like, it's not until I've had the experience of making a movie and spending so much energy, pouring my guts into this movie for years. But had it not been for that experience, I wouldn't have the reference point to really appreciate how fun it is to just go shoot something and just focus on execution. I don't have to worry about money. I don't have to worry about crew. I don't have to worry about all this other stuff. I can just take something really simple and just focus on how can I execute this thing to the best of my ability. Mm-hmm. And because I don't have all this other stuff, I can just really get into the details in a way that you can't when you have these big, ambitious films. Like the details get lost. Unless you have a really good crew or you've done it before, details get lost.
But also,
you're just trying to survive.
But also, isn't it important to be self-aware of where you strive? Because there are people, there are directors, there are filmmakers who strive in high pressure, high situation, big budgets. Like Spielberg could go onto a set with $200 million and not even blink. He'd
but
be
he's
like,
also earned that though.
But he's earned it. Exactly. So you have to also figure out where in the spectrum, if you will, do you thrive in? Do you thrive in a high pressure, big budget world? And I'm not even talking about that. Let's not even talk about the studios. Let's talk about $5 million. Let's talk about $3 million. Let's talk about $1 million, which is a lot of money. Can you thrive in that world, or do you make more sense and thrive more in a $50,000 world, a $25,000 world, $5,000 feature? Do you thrive in that world where you're going to be happier, you're going to be more content, you're going to be able to thrive as a storyteller, as a filmmaker? These are questions that you need to ask. And it took me, look, you're much farther along than I am because I got about 10 years on you, and you've figured this stuff out now at your age. I'm figuring it out when I'm in my mid-40s, like early to mid-40s. But I figured it out. Like I finally figured out what makes me happy, what makes me content with my career and with my life. And I only found it, oddly enough, and I'm sure you feel the same way, I only found that answer by being of service to my community, to being of service to because by doing that, I discovered what I want and what I need. And it became a wonderful synergetic a relationship with my audience and with the people who listen to my babblings and things like that. And I feel that, from talking to you, I'm sure you feel the same way.
I do. I've found that, I forget what the quote is, but the best way to help yourself is to help someone else. Some kind of quote like that. but it was something I had to grow into because, again, when I started, it was the whole tips thing. I didn't go to school. I didn't go to school to become a film school,
Right.
But it wasn't until I was in the community of YouTube enough to bump into a couple things and what's going on over here, and then you slowly kind of grow into certain things. And that's something that I had to grow into. And then once I got into it and saw that how I was impacting people's lives, then it stuck with me for sure. But I always had to remind myself, like, what I really am after, because I think it's too easy to, and this is a trap you can fall into. It's easy to fall into what works and then lose sight of what your heart really wants. And I think there are some people on YouTube where it's like, once they find that, and it goes back to what you're saying, what makes you happy. Some people in the community are like, oh, hey, I fell into this, like, giving advice and reviews and helping people out. Cool. I'm totally happy doing this. Boom. Till the cows come home. But for me, once I got into it, it was exhilarating at first, but I got so far into it that I was getting away from shooting.
Right.
Because it's like, I sit in my room or a studio or whatever and make these tip videos. And then it became the grind of making the next tip video and the next tip video and the next tip video. And then people want this tip and that tip and this tip and that tip. And it's like, okay, well, now you got a whole assortment of tip videos coming up. And then before you know it, you're like, man, when have I actually shot anything? And when am I going to shoot something? And if I'm so busy making video after video after video after video that I'm not getting a chance to work on what I want to work on, which is to become a better filmmaker. And ultimately, I can't give my audience the best value that I can give them if my journey has stopped.
Right.
Because there's a limit to your knowledge, like I haven't worked with every camera. My experience with crews is somewhat limited. I mean, I've had my own crew for my feature and I've worked with some crews in some capacities and other features, but there's a cap, so it's like, I want to give more, but I can't do that until I level up too, but I can't level up if I'm so busy shelling out everything right now. It's like, so for me, I had to find that balance. And, that's why I've gotten into like the shoot start to finish series and all that. And I've been happier doing that, where I'm giving value and sharing value, but it's along with my journey and what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, I can't stop being a filmmaker just because you want all the tips in the world so you can be a filmmaker. It's like, what about me?
It has to be a balance.
I've got my wants too.
There has to be a balance without question.
Gotta be a balance.
So, sir, so we are honing in at almost 2 hours now, as I knew we would. And for everyone listening, if you're still listening, this is a small example of what Darious and I did at the Mammoth Film Festival.
Oh, yeah, that's 2 days.
We just talked and talked and
bro,
talked.
My flight, man, got canceled, man. Let's grab breakfast, man. Let's talk. And boom, 3 hours later.
it was actually really a lot of fun. And it was an absolute pleasure meeting you in person and finding like a brother from another mother in this business. So it was really, really great. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all of my guests. I'm sure you might know these now. All right.
Oh, man. I'm not ready to answer them, but go ahead on.
All right. So we've talked about this ad nauseum, so just make a quick answer. What advice would you give a filmmaker wanting to break in the business today?
Start small, lean projects. Focus on what are you learning right now.
Can you tell me what book had the biggest impact on your life or career?
Film-wise.
It doesn't matter to be film-wise or any kind of book.
That's a tough one. There's a lot of them. For right now, I will say Judith Weston's Directing Actors. Definitely.
That's a great book. I like that one. That's a very, very good book. What lesson took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
You can't fake value. Your success is dependent on your value. And it's true across the board. YouTube, film. I think when people have the goods, it shows. And when you don't, or you're still a work in progress, it shows. And it's okay to be a work in progress, but don't expect to own the farm when you're still a work in progress. There's a reason why the people who hit, especially on YouTube, the ones who just boom, straight up to the top. But it's obvious when you look at their stuff. It's like, whoa, they're hitting on so many tiers, man.
Like Peter McKinnon and those kind of guys.
Very charismatic, understands the filmmaking community. He's a student of YouTube. You can see it oozing out of his work that he understands YouTube itself as a platform. Obviously good at photography, very good at videography, very stylish, also fashionable. Also what he represents, because he's not coming at you with chains and, like, look at my suit. No, he's just a dude, and he dresses like just a dude. Very relatable. Like he just checks a lot of boxes for a lot of different people.
Three of your favorite films of all time, sir.
Old Boy, one. I love Chan-wook Park's work. Possession with Sam Neill, the guy from Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Possession, that is a transgressive film that got banned in a whole bunch of countries when it came out. But that was one of the films that made me want to make films. And Star Wars.
Sure, that's always a good go-to. Everybody has.
I like my entertainment type stuff too. Not everything's got to be a deep dive into like existential whatever. You know what I mean? I like
popcorn movies, man.
Well, you know what? Black Panther.
Yeah, man. I love Black Panther. Do you think it's gonna win? Probably not.
It might win something. I don't know.
It'll win something. But
it's not going to go empty-handed. Not with the records they broke, man.
No, absolutely not, man. And where can people find you and your work, sir?
D4Darious. YouTube /D4Darious.
The D in the number 4.
D, the number 4, and then Dare. Even if you misspell it, it'll probably pop up. D4Darious on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Everything is all D4Darious.
Brother, man, it has been an epic conversation. I know we could keep talking because I know we can.
Easily.
Oh, we could keep talking.
That was the tip of the iceberg. Like, bro, yeah, that was just the tip of the iceberg, man.
I mean, I'm going to call this the brutal and honest truth of independent filmmaking. That's what this episode is going to be called, something along those lines, because there's a lot of great knowledge bombs in this episode.
A lot of stuff to unpack, but hopefully, I want to leave people inspired, though.
Yeah, man.
I know we did a lot of like hard talk of like factual realist type things, but at the end of the day, if you want it, it's out there for you.
Yes.
But you have to take it one step at a time and be aggressive. It's all about, if you lay your head to bed at the end of any day and you can't point to one thing you learned to help you get closer to your goal, you failed. That's what it all comes down to.
Amen. There's no question. And it's never been a better time to be a filmmaker than it is in today's world.
Oh, yeah.
The opportunities are there. The technology is there, and only getting better every day that goes by. Cheaper. But it's up to you to do the work, to figure things out, to educate yourself, and to get yourself out there, and also be able to pivot from that ridiculous dream that they sold you. Yeah, that they sold you back at film school, that there's only one way. There's only cheeseburger. And
it's for you. You might be that lucky person out there where that is for you, because sometimes it does happen. But I think you're doing yourself a disservice if that's all you aspire to be, because there's all different kind of other flavors out there. You don't know what you don't know. As they say, you reach for the stars just to fall into the clouds, and that's not so bad. It's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love where I'm at right now. I'm way more happier and freer where I'm at right now.
Same here.
But I wouldn't have got here had I not been reaching for something higher. And that may come later. I don't know. But right now, I'm happy.
I'm good, man. I'm good too. Brother, man, thank you again for sharing all your knowledge, brother. I appreciate it. And we'll do a part 2 or 3 or 4 to this, I'm sure, in the next year or so.
All right, brother, man.
Did I tell you or did I tell you? This was an epic conversation with Darious. And I want to thank Darious for his time and being able to drop some major knowledge bombs on the tribe today. If you guys are still listening, God bless, man. Thank you for hanging in there with us through this entire interview. I know it was well worth it. There's so much information, a lot of golden nuggets in there. And honestly, if you are a, let's say, seasoned filmmaker, or if you know a filmmaker who's just starting out, or they're just coming out of film school, or they just kind of have still stars in their eyes, this is the episode you want to send them. Please share this episode with people like that, with filmmakers and screenwriters and creatives like that, because this is a real good wake-up call to inform them on what the business is truly like and the lifestyle that they are choosing to go down. Now, if you want links to anything we talked about in this episode, including all the information about Darious, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/302. In the show notes, I put 2 great videos of his. One of them is Why Are We Filmmakers? And that video has been seen 300,000-400,000 times. And it is a great, great, great video explaining why we do this crazy, crazy job of being filmmakers and put ourselves through everything that we do to make our work and our art. But it's a great, great video, so definitely check it out. And if you haven't already, please head over to indiefilmhustle.com/mob and pre-order my new book, Shooting for the Mob, my story of how I almost made a $20 million film for a gangster. It's an incredible story, and I can't wait for it to get out there. And people who have read it already have been giving me great, great reviews, so I'm so blessed and humbled by that, and I really hope it gets out there. So please pre-order it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, wherever you go, but this link will take you straight to Amazon, indiefilmhustle.com/mob. And that's it, guys. I'm not going to talk anymore because this was a long episode, but I think well worth it. So as always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.